I love Peter Attia because he's very, very upfront.
I read his book. Outlive.
So he's like,
fucking awesome.
I was a fucking prick. I was an asshole. I was the biggest asshole and most insufferable, egotistical, person that there was. And I love that, man, because it's like, I know at times when I was in my 30s, I was the same way. It's funny when you're an insufferable prick, there's probably a correlation between how bad your physical health is. You know what I mean? And one of the things that he talked about was, is that, listen, it's all about staying young long. It's all about health span, right? That's what it's all about. For me too. What he said that I thought was so great was that there are 3 components of being young and health span. And that is your physical health, your emotional health, and your cognitive health. What's up, brother? What are you doing, man?
Just getting ready for Christmas.
Dude, that's awesome. The reason I'm laughing is because I am in Brighton, England, and getting ready for Christmas is taking on a whole new meaning because it is as cold and as damp. I am in this, the Mushashuyo continues. And I think it's funny, man. It's like I was just writing about the absolute critical, we talk about it, of like knowing thyself. And I think I might have mentioned it last time, but trying to put down roots for me, man, I'm starting to realize, no, man, I'm not feeling it. That's not
that stone's got to keep rolling, man. That stone
is rolling now, and
I get it.
So yeah, I'm in Brighton, England. I'm really in this seaside town that is on the English Channel. So I am like south of London, and it is
how far from London?
A couple hours, like hour and a half, 2 hours. Everything for me now is not like, it's all about jumping on a train. So it's like an hour train ride, but it's cool, man. It's this like little Victorian like village called Shoreham. I want to say, I keep saying it's Shoreham by the Sea. It's not Shoreham by the Sea. It's Shoreham by Sea. I don't know why they lost the article on that, but yeah, it's really, really cool, man. It's like this little bitty Victorian town, and it's next to a bigger like city called Brighton, and Brighton's another, like, it's on the English Channel, but it's a bigger city, and it's really cool. And so a couple really cool things is that today I got to roll. I've been rolling over in Brighton. So went over there. There's a check mat over there. And I went over and met the guys, the head instructor, the owner is a guy named Yusuf, really, really good. And mainly a gi guy. And then there's, I just been doing no gi. I have a gi here, actually, but I have just been training no gi. And so been training over there with a guy named Ollie, and he's really, really good. He trained at B Team and with Donaher in Austin. And so we've been getting some really good rolls and going over some really good stuff. And so that's cool. Another guy I trained with right around here is a guy named, he was a UFC fighter named Hathaway, and John Hathaway. And so I went and trained over there the other day. So training's good. And, but it's really cool. And then, dude, check this out. I'm going to show you a video. But right when I got in town, someone hit me on Instagram from BMW, and they're like, dude, we know you ride.
I saw that.
Do you want to ride? You want to grab a motorcycle? Come into the dealership, pick out any motorcycle you want. And
like to give it to you?
No, to just ride while I'm here.
Oh.
Just while I'm here. And so I was like, absolutely. So
don't threaten me with a good time.
So I'm like, yes, I will definitely take you up on that offer.
There's a BMW bike that when I wound up getting an Indian Scout bobber, but there was a BMW
Mm.
that I was looking at, and I forget what it was called. It was like one of the, like the crossover looking bikes that are like kind of looks like a Ducati a little bit.
Yeah.
It had like a blue kind of frame with like a brown tan leather seat. I forget what they
This
were
I think
called,
is
but it
it.
was
I think
so
this is
dope.
it. Yeah, that's the bike I got. So I could have taken
Yeah.
anything. And the one I really want to next time when I come in, because a couple guys ride, and one of the guys, the connection is one of the guys trains jiu-jitsu, and so had seen me fight in a Polaris match here, and I think um, a couple years ago, and so I so I went and I looked at all the bikes, and one of the bikes that I want to get, that I want to ride next time, is one of the dual sports. So when I was in Sicily, you would see guys come in from like Germany and Sweden, and they would ride through the Alps. They would ride all the way across Europe, and they had like these dual sport bikes, which are kind of like enduros, but they're the coolest bikes. And that's the kind of bike, because I really would like to do a like cross Europe trip where I ride
Mm.
all the way from like Portugal to or to France, all the way down to Sicily, all the way through the
Yeah.
Alps. I want to do all that because I've already done cross country in America, and so that's the kind of bike. But this time I grabbed the bike that the bike that you're talking about, and so I'm gonna show you this video, man. And I went on a ride yesterday, and because, dude, I'm in this dreary ass, we're on the English channel, and it is cold
Yeah.
and there is not much sun. But yesterday some sun came out, and I went on this like hour and a half ride all the way through this national park, and it's cold, dude. It's cold. So I'm bundled up. Look at me now. And
Yeah.
I mean, I came from Miami. I was on a fucking yacht
Yeah.
in
Yeah. No, I
Miami
said to you before,
chilling.
not used to seeing you like that.
And so being here, but anyways, I went on this ride all the way through this English countryside and went to this castle called Arundel. And I'm going to show you the video right now. But first, I'm going to show you the village that I'm in, and it's like this. What's really cool, Jesse, about this little village, Shorm, is that in the middle, to get to the pubs and all of the Indian restaurants and all there, it's like got the coolest scene, and even the gym. I found a gym where I work out all the time, but to get there, you have to walk through this graveyard that is
Mm.
attached with these
Yeah,
old,
you
like,
mentioned
dude,
that.
it's like a movie set, dude. It's like a
That's
Black
cool.
Sabbath album, man. And so by this church, and so every day I walk through smoking my pipe, and I'm just like, this is so cool. This is so cool. Let the
I love
Musha
that.
Studio continue. So let
Continue.
me put this on right now and see if this works. This will be a first for us. Can you see that?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Would you still have me in the thing?
I'm seeing your fingers on the keyboard.
Oh, okay, hold on. I'm getting it, man. Um, so, anyways, let me see if I can make this happen, bro. Okay, how about now?
Yeah. Yep. Now I got it. Now I got it.
Now you got the screen.
Yep.
All right. Can you see that?
It's a little blurry, I think, because of the connection, because how
Uh,
it's hard. Yeah, but I see it. Yeah, yeah, I can see it. It looks sick.
and
When
here's
it
the
comes
bike.
through on the finished
Yeah, and it might.
Yeah, that's it. That's the bike. That's the one I was talking
Yeah,
about. I think. Uh, that's dope. That's super dope.
that's
That's
the
dope.
castle right there. Can you see it?
Wow. Oh man. Oh man, that's so cool.
Yeah, I brought my drone with me, man.
That is so cool. You heard about the drones over here?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. Dude, how
Everybody's going.
badass is that castle right there, bro?
That's unbelievable.
I know,
And
it's so
you're
cool.
just whipping around on the fucking moto, just fucking living it, man. That's
I'm
dope.
living it, bro. I am living it. Yeah.
You're like Musashi in that animated series. You're just like the lone gunman, the lone samurai, the Ronin. Just fucking, I love it, dude. I love
I
it.
am a Ronin,
I
man.
love
I
it.
can't help it, bro. I am what I am. Know thyself, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I love it. I love it.
So yeah, so anyways, that's the bike. I had it like an amazing, like it was like really it turned out being like a 5 hour, 6 hour excursion and finding this castle. I never even been up there. I didn't know what to expect. And I saw this castle and I was like, oh my gosh. And so that's kind of the cool thing about, riding bikes in Europe is, all around Sicily too, is finding like castles and abandoned castles. And dude, it's so dope, man. So dope. And right next to the gym in Brighton today, after I left, I like walked across the street and I was going to the train, and all of a sudden I saw this like Indian, like total Indian, like with the domed, with the rounded domes and this palace. And it was a palace, it turns out, in Brighton that King George, I think it was the Mad King George, who was a lunatic. I think his son create built this castle like in 1820, and he
Really?
built the castle so that he could have sex party. Is basically what the tour, that's what the tour guide. I was like, what's going on here? She was like looking around. She's like, okay, let me tell you what really this place was about.
Wow.
Yeah, and this
I
castle
mean, God
is
bless him,
this
If you got the bread to build a castle for sex parties, can't be mad at you.
this palace is incredible. Yeah,
Wow.
man, it was crazy. So that was today, and so yeah, it's really cool, man, really cool. So, anyways, get to see my daughter and and on top of all that, get to hang out with my granddaughter. So it's all good,
Oh man,
all
that's
good.
great.
Yeah.
So
So what's going on with
in
you,
the
man?
vein,
Mm-hmm. Let
oh
me
man,
hear
I'm fucking hanging on, like this, fucking
it.
two finger grips, just trying to stay alive. But in the vein of the Mushashuga, I have a question, right? So this is it. This is
Mm-hmm.
interesting in what we talk about. So I think I probably know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like you spend a lot of time by yourself.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And have you always been comfortable with that, or did that take a long time to develop that?
You know, I've always been like before I got married, I was very much like I would spend a lot of time in libraries. Being a writer and writing, you spend an insane amount of time by yourself, right? But I think after over like 28 years of being with a family, it became, I think I developed like a an attachment and a fear of kind of like not of being alone because I like being alone, but of like being like alone. And so I had to go through, um, I had to go through a reacquaintance with getting to really know myself to where I was like, yeah, this is, and what's crazy now is now I'm like, I don't know how that transition, if I go through that ever again, to be with someone again, if how that would work. Because
To cohabitate?
yeah, I mean, because I kind of am in a I'm in a position where I go where I want, when I want, do what I want, when I want, do what, you know what I mean? And and I have a lot of like, as I have a lot of routines that can be perceived by someone else as being selfish. It's like the whole thing of like the worst boyfriend. I've heard girls say this or women say this, is that the worst boyfriend in the world you could ever get is someone who's a surfer. Because
Uh,
surfers are incredibly selfish because, when you go surfing, that's a 4 or 5 hour affair, and it's not like golf, which is incredibly selfish. Also, it's like when the waves are good, you're going, or else you're not a surfer. And so you're just like later, and if they don't like it, it's like, sorry, I'm a server, So
Interesting.
I've you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, I wake up in the morning, I do my routine, I meditate, then I do work, those are all like for me. And then, I'm going to do some yoga. That's for me. It's like, you can do it with me, but, then I'm going to go to the gym. Okay, you can do it with me, but this is when I'm going, Then I'm going to meditate again. Then I'm going to go, you know what I mean? Then I'm going to go to jujitsu. And, so, and this is really wild. So since I've been here, I haven't been rolling and training as much. And I have absolutely, from a mental health standpoint, I have absolutely felt it, coupled with not having the sun, which I'm used to having the sun like every day and just like basking in the sun,
You feel a lot different.
Yeah, totally, man. It's like getting to me where I'm like, oh, it feels so oppressive. But at the same time, every time I go to jujitsu, then I feel great. So, if it's, so not going to jujitsu has really, and breaking like one of my patterns has really left me like in a place where I'm like really feeling it. So,
I think that's what when you get so tight on routines, when you fall out, it's hard.
it's hard, man, right?
It's
It's
hard.
really hard. And so, so I'm feeling that. I'm really, really, really feeling that. And,
I
what can
feel
I
like
do?
where I'm at, like I need to work on like because I thrive off of interaction with other people, like even like in the way that I work, like my whole life, like I am a communicator. I'm a person
Mm-hmm.
who, it's what I do. People is what I do. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
always like, and you know, I'm realizing that I have to get a little bit better at, being alone and being able to content myself
Mm-hmm.
just doing nothing. And, you know what I mean? Being able to be relaxed alone, it's kind of
No,
hard for
I'm
me.
I'm 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 very comfortable. I've always been like that. So back to your question, the answer to your question. Yeah, I had to reacclimate myself to not being alone, because I've always been, alone throughout my days, just because I write and I do things like that. But the idea of the mental attachment of knowing someone was there and then not having that created a lot of that breaking that attachment. It goes back to what we talk about a lot of is, attachment causes suffering, and I had a huge attachment that I had to break, and I have broken that. But as far as being alone, there are different people, though. I think you are one of those people. You're one of those people who thrives, in that
Yeah,
interaction with other people. And
big
I,
time.
for the most part, I get that through jujitsu, and that's
Yeah,
probably one of the few places that I get it.
sure. It's all interesting stuff.
Yeah, well, it's like know thyself. It's kind of like what we were saying, right? It's like you have to
Yep.
know thyself, man. What is it how do you thrive? And so, do you feel like you're, do you feel like it's something you need to move towards?
I think so. I mean, considering, the horizon that I'm looking out at, um, I think that I have to get, and I think it also comes back to like what we always talk about like the external validation from other people and just even just interaction, like feeling as though like there's momentum, you know what I mean? Like I think I need to get better at being able to be okay when there isn't any momentum in the moment, like I'm like a momentum junkie, you know what I mean? Like I always need to
Yeah,
feel as though like I'm on the path, whatever the path is, and I'm moving
movement.
towards something.
Yeah, and movement is, addicting. I mean, look at me
It
with
is.
travel. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. I love the novelty of it. I love to, it's completely an addiction, where I'm like, okay, I've been in a place long enough. I've done it. I've seen it. I'm now starting to get bored. I want
Well,
some
because
trout.
it's
I
like
want some.
it, it's like we talk about all the time. It's like it's another version of having to be with yourself. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's another version of how the more you keep moving, the more you can continue to take in external stimulus,
You
novelty,
know,
variation.
I think this is something that this is like a really important like nuance um, that all of us need to deal with. It's like I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, the whole Zen thing is not for me because, I want to achieve and I don't want to, and I have these desires. And I'm like, that is not, that's where the nuance comes in. It's like the problem isn't, the problem is kind of like what you're saying, is if we are wanting to experience something to distract us from something uncomfortable, then there's a problem, right? And we should address
Sure.
that problem. Am I moving? Is my Moshishugyo because in constant, enjoying? Is it because I'm not comfortable and it's a form of aversion? Because aversion is desire and aversion are the same thing, and they're both
Do you
suffering.
do you think that there's a component of your need to move that's rooted in aversion?
I don't know. I don't know. I think there could be, but I feel like what my mind tells me is that I enjoy the novelty of it, and that I enjoy, being alive and being to experience. For me, I grew up without in a family without much money, and so there was no opportunity for travel, and so now I swore to myself that when I got old, once I reached like 17, 18 years old, I started to travel because I was like, this is this is my gift to myself. I never got to experience this.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think part of it is like, being like, I'm not going to be here very long on this earth. And so I would like to experience as much as I can. And I think as long, and your question is amazing because that's really it. Is like, is this rooted in aversion? Is this a form of not dealing with, who I am? I mean, I'm very comfortable sitting with myself, meditating and, all of that. So, um,
Do you think that there's maybe a like do you think there's maybe like when you start to think long term, like when you
mhm.
start to think like big picture long term, do you think that maybe there's some holes there, like 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 that it's easier to avoid that thought process of like, you know what I'm saying, like having to, because I mean that's like, like societally speaking, that's how people would, what are you planning, what's your plans for your future, what are you, where are you going to end up, what are you, you know what I mean, what are you working on, you know
That's
what I mean,
my
like,
that's my aversion.
okay, to
That's
not
my
have to
aversion.
not have to
I don't
answer
want to
those questions.
I don't want to answer those questions. I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
I don't. Yes, absolutely. 100%. You hit it right on. You should be a psychologist. No, 100% that my aversion is I don't want to sit here and think about and plan on what am I going to do when I'm old and elderly. I don't want to fucking think about that. I don't want to. Who wants to think about that? Like,
Well, I mean, I think you could make the argument, right? You could make the argument that you are thinking about it in terms of like you're taking care of yourself and
yes,
you're ensuring, or you're doing what you can do to ensure that like Peter Attia talks about this a lot, and I
Mm-hmm.
like this. The thought process of like training, taking care of yourself, eating right. It's all about buying insurance for the final decade of your life, so
Yes.
that the final decade of your life, you're mobile, you're active. And so like outside of like the financial shit and like 401k and all that kind of crap, um, if you're investing in the physicality, you are thinking about the future. You know what I'm saying? To a certain extent.
Yeah, and maybe that's a really good question. Sorry, I had to nail these lights down. And maybe Jesse, it's such an interesting thing because this is really my thing right here. This is really my issue. Is that no, my aversion in life is it does freak me out, and when I think about like the future like that, when I think about like being like 70, 80 years old, especially 80 years old, I'm like, man, I can't imagine, what that will look like because so much of my life is like, and I think this is for all of us, is rooted in being healthy, and being able to
Yeah.
travel. I'm going to be 57 this year. And I'm rolling today with 20-year-old. And 20-year-old today Ollie was like, man, dude, I would do anything to be able to roll like you when I'm freaking 57 years old.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think there is that aversion where it's like I don't fear, for me, I don't look at like mortality and death as being like, as being something that freaks me out at all. But what freaks me out is being unable. You know what I mean? From a
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
standpoint, I just heard, and this is one of the. It's so funny you were talking about Peter Attia because I was just listening to a podcast with him, and I'm so stealing this. So I will note this that I'm stealing it from him, but he was talking about how, and I love Peter Attia because what he's very very upfront with, like, man, I on this podcast he was like, so people don't know he's a doctor, right? And
Yeah.
he is very very, have you listened to a bunch of podcasts with him?
Yeah. I read his book. Outlive.
uh so he's
It's
like,
fucking awesome.
I was a fucking prick, I was an asshole, I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
I was the biggest asshole and most insufferable, egotistical, you know, person that there was. And I love that, man, because it's like, you know, I know at times, when I was in my 30s, I was the same way. And it's very, for me, it was, and it might have been, it might be a very similar journey. And in fact, this ties into what he was saying, is that it's funny when you're an insufferable prick, there's probably a correlation between how bad your physical health is. You know what I mean?
Ah.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that he talked about was, is that, listen, it's all about staying young long. It's all about health span, right? That's what it's all about. For me too, right? For you, it's like, but what
Yeah.
he said that I thought was so great was that there are three components of being young and health span, and that is your physical health, your emotional health, and your cognitive health.
Hmm.
And for me, those three things are so interrelated. There's that Venn diagram where it's like, you cannot, there's this misthinking among a lot of people that I don't have to worry about my emotional health. I just got to go in the gym and work out, and lift weights. It's like,
Not enough.
no,
Not
no,
enough.
no. That's not, I've coached enough people
I mean,
now.
it's good. It helps. It's important. It's
It's one
definitely, a
sphere, and it
piece.
is it is
Yeah.
important. You
But you
can't
gotta
ignore it.
have
That's what he's saying, is you can't ignore this.
you gotta have insight into what's going on inside. I mean, there's no guarantee that insight is going to solve problems, but you got to at least have insight and awareness to like what you're saying, like know thyself, because we all have blind spots and we all have demons specifically for specific reasons. And, I know that, I'm 42 and going to therapy and all that kind of stuff. Like there are problems that I have that have manifested in the last few years that like really I didn't truly understand and like realize. And I consider myself a pretty self-aware person. I've always been pretty self-aware. I've always been able to like, see myself from a distance and say, okay, you're good at this, but you're not good at that. But like I've kind of come up on problems and issues that I was absolutely not fucking aware of. And I think that like that is, you got to make a commitment to sussing that shit out in your life. I think if you have a chance of survival.
I don't see, honestly, I don't see how, you can ignore one of those three. I think what he's saying is so clear. And I think the thing when I first started working with people that kind of blew me away was, I got the question early on is I realized that these problems, these emotional problems, and this is what I think he's saying also is that, the entropy of old age as we age, these things get worse. Your health is going to decline. Your cognitive health is going to decline. But another thing is that emotionally, your emotional health is also going to decline. And the reason I say that is because, it's like we may have talked about this before, there's the stereotypical old man in the house all by himself yelling at kids who come on his driveway. It's like you get worse. Yeah. And if you don't take care of this shit, it gets worse and worse and worse. So these three spheres, these pillars of health span, you've got to deal with these things. And because they are going to get worse. And if your emotional health starts to really decline, it's going to affect your ability to go to the gym, to work out, to eat right. That's what I found with people is that when they haven't dealt with their psyche and the impressions in their psyche and the whatever you want to call it, trauma, whatever patterns, whatever you want to call it, emotional, if you don't deal with that shit, it will sabotage all of your efforts. And that's why people cannot lose weight without even knowing it. Nope. They don't even know it. I don't even know it. So it's really wild that you brought him up because I've really been thinking about what he's been saying, what he said, and how, you have to deal. And I think the thing that's so intense is that if you don't start dealing with this shit in your 30s, most of my friends who are in their mid 50s and are physically have problems as far as, their weight and their lack of muscle and all that. And they can't get in the gym. They might be able to get in the gym like once a week, once every 2 weeks. They just can't pull it together. They might be financially successful, but they can't pull it together. Why can't you pull it together? It's because
it's interesting.
Why? Why is it that you can't do this one thing that, you really only have to go in that gym for 10 minutes a day? Why can you not get in the gym for 10 minutes a day and do the most basic workout ever? What is that?
The mental and it's the perspective, you know what I mean? Like I find that, people are looking at things in the wrong way. And when you're looking at it in the wrong way, it's very difficult to make it work,
It's that
the ability to reframe things.
Yeah.
Frees you up.
Well, I like that because that's really cool, man, because when we're young, we have enormous agility, right? And flexibility. And as we age, we start losing that and we start calcifying, but not just our ligaments and our tendons, you know what I mean? But our minds and the way that, like you're saying, my ability to reframe, you hit it right on the head. You start losing your ability to reframe. And when you lose your ability to reframe, you're stuck in a rut and you can't get to the gym. You want to, You might go
Yeah.
for, you might go until you feel like absolute shit and then force yourself to go get a workout. And then 2 days later, you're back in your rut. And so what I find is that if you don't deal with these things in your 30s, man, by the time you get to your 50s and 60s,
Yeah.
sorry,
It's almost impossible.
it's fucking impossible, man. So it's really like, I want to like when I go to the gym and I'm in jujitsu and, I always sit in lotus position when I'm sitting there. Um, um, and all the kids are like, I say kids like 20 years old, 30 years old. They're like, how in the world is it that, you're so flexible? Because it plays out as I'm playing guard. When I'm playing guard, I'm all over the place, with using my flexibility. And I tell them, I'm like, listen, when I was 30 years old, I had zero flexibility, zero. So this is something that if you start putting in just a little bit of time every day, you'll make these changes. But dude, Jesse, what's so crazy is that before last year, I would do stretches, but I never did yoga. And it was so hard for me to break the rut of in my mental thinking that I wasn't good enough to do yoga.
Interesting.
Is that the dumbest thing you've ever heard?
Totally.
It's almost like in my mind, and I would tell people this, I'm too intimidated, but in my mind, I was treating it like it was like I was going to run a marathon or something and everybody was going to be watching.
Yeah.
And it was, you know what I mean? But it was one of the things that you're talking about. And now every single day I do yoga for 10 minutes and it has been one of the best things I've ever done, but it was fucking hard to make that change. Isn't that crazy?
It's so your mind, your mind is so, it's like it gives you the ability to free yourself and it gives you the ability to trap yourself. I was thinking about you, yesterday. I like historically, I don't like to run. Like running has really not been like, but I've always trained. I've been working out in some way or shape or form since I'm 18, and it's always been part of my life. Um, and like, so I started lifting weights, then I started doing martial arts when I was about 29 because I was tired of lifting weights and it just wasn't doing it for me anymore.
Yeah.
And then I started training, MMA style stuff. And then I got the jujitsu and then didn't lift weights for a really long time. And then I got hurt. I pulled my shoulder, I dislocated my shoulder, and then lifting weights became about strengthening my body for longevity. And for some reason that locked me in a way to lifting weights that I couldn't find when I was just like lifting weights as the pure form of exercise. And then recently, my shoulder's been acting up again, so I haven't really been lifting weights, but I have one of those like curved fucking treadmills, like the self-propelled, like what I'm talking about.
Those things are
And
amazing.
and because I really haven't been lifting much, I've been like doing like interval sprints on that, and I don't ever do that because I don't really like doing it, but I've been really enjoying it. And like what I was thinking about was like making the practice of I train because I got to move and it makes me feel good. And I also look good because I train, is so much more important than I lift weights and that's what I do. Or I do jujitsu and that's what I do. Or I'm a runner. You know what I mean? Like all of those like identifying things, like to where like you take these things to make them part of your identity. I feel like the more I've been able to move myself away from that and be closer to the action, the doing, the practice, and what that does for me, it's opened up things that I wasn't able to previously open up. And I find that really cool because it's like Now I'm like running and doing sprints and shit, and it feels good. It feels very enjoyable, and I'm getting, you know, a different aerobic type of exercise, and because you're not always going to be able to be on the lifting weights, you're not always going to be able to do jiu-jitsu, you're not always whatever, but you can always do something. You can
You know,
keep fucking
yeah,
moving. You can
yeah,
keep moving.
yeah. Yeah, I think about, I think about the fact that, how long will I be able to, spar and all that? Probably for a long time. But I also think about, well, maybe one day I'll be doing Tai Chi, and maybe I'll go,
Yeah,
go to the Shaolin Temple. I went to the Shaolin Temple and asked about it because I want to learn Tai Chi in Los Angeles, and I just didn't take a class, but they have a Tai Chi class. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll go to China. And you know what I mean? On a Mushu Shugyo, and I'll go to the Shaolin Temple there and I'll learn how to do Tai Chi, something, because you're absolutely right. There will be times, when something will be injured or something will be, where,
you
but
do what you can with what you
yes.
got, and that's Zen.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I will say too about lifting weights. I think that COVID and being in the van for a year really taught me that, man, if you just have bands and you're just doing some resistance and you're doing it for 15 minutes a day and you got a couple weights, you don't need a gym. You don't need, you know what I mean? I learned really quick
Yeah,
that I did not need any of that shit. Is that
you
I
just got to
needed
give
just
yourself a
very
pump. You just
minimal.
got to get a pump
Yes.
wherever you need
Yes.
to get a pump.
Yeah, and here the great thing about Europe is that, and what I really enjoy being back here is the fact that I'm walking again all the motherfucking time. You
Yeah,
know what I
that's
mean?
that's big. That's big.
Something I resisted so much when I first came to Europe, and now it's so
Yeah.
addicting, man, to just move and feel your body moving. So just kind of echoing what you're saying is, yeah, you don't have to run a marathon. You just got to move, give some
See, but
resistance, get some.
so here's the rub, which is very difficult for me. It's like I identify so much with the just keep moving, and I believe that a huge percentage of life's problems can be answered with that maxim of just keep moving. But there's that little piece to where like learn how to sit still. You know what I mean? And that is just as important as understanding just keep moving. You know, it's
It's
such
the
a it's
paradox.
the
It's like we were
yeah,
saying, it's
it's
the
the
paradox,
paradox.
man. You have to be able to sit still with yourself. I mean, one of the most powerful forms of meditation is walking meditation, where you're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
no headphones, you're just walking. You're really like, they teach that. That was the first form of meditation that I learned, but it's walking. And, because some people are like, well, I can't sit still, so I can't meditate. It's like, no, you don't have to fucking sit still. You can go do dishes. You can do a Zen garden. You can, as long as you're going through the process of like releasing, recognizing a thought, releasing it, and returning, and training your mind to be present and be present and be present, and just sitting with yourself. And so that's really, so there's that whole movement. Are we moving to, like, it's exactly what you're saying. It's a perfect way to end this, is that it's exactly what you're saying. Am I doing my Mushu Shugyo because I'm avoiding myself, or am I doing it because I'm exploring this reality and I'm enjoying it, and I think as long as we're not averting, we're not avoiding, and we're really diving into the moment and the present and being so comfortable with ourselves in whatever we're doing dishes or walking or, whatever it is, then the more comfortable we get with ourselves, the easier life gets and the more present we can be with other people. So, yeah. No, I think that's awesome,
Big
man.
time.
Mm-hmm. What do you got? You've been, dude, I've been watching the new Dune Prophecy
I gotta
series.
check that out.
I am so addicted to it, man. I am so addicted to it. Oh my gosh.
It's on Max.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Max, I gotta check it out.
It's so, if you like the Dune universe, then
I
it's
do. I
really,
do.
yeah, psychedelics,
I do like it. Yeah.
psychedelics, martial arts, sci-fi. I mean, I'm in heaven. I'm like, yeah,
All the good stuff.
all the good stuff.